For the longest time, podcasting has just been free. Well, now Apple have announced that they are going to introduce a way in which podcast creators can get paid, but they're in a pretty crowded market. You've got Spotify, you've got Audible, you've got a whole bunch of other providers here. So what difference is it going to make for users and what difference is it going to make for podcast creators? Let's find out. We have Meg Coffey, social media strategist, and Peter Marks, software developer with Access Informatics. Just explain to me exactly what Apple have announced.
Yes, well, our good friends at Apple have announced that they're going to allow you to put your podcast on their system for a measly 30% cut of it. It's actually going to be fantastic.
All right. So this is the first opportunity that Apple have presented to monetize podcasts. Is that right, Meg?
Yeah. So look, it's an interesting one because Apple historically, they've been anti-advertising and the basis of podcasting is advertising. So it's going to be an interesting way to see how they go into this foray. But by using their platform and your own unique, and I say that in air quotes because they want that unique content that's not anywhere else, they think that they can make a cut through and beat many of the other podcasting platforms out there.
So this is interesting, Peter. Apple will let podcast publishers sell subscriptions to individual shows. Why have they decided to do this now?
Well, I think podcasting is still in its infancy. I mean, it started only in 2004 when Adam Curry and Dave Weiner specified using RSS, which was used for text news feeds up until then, as a way of distributing a series of episodes. So it's always been an open standard. It just worked like the web. Of course, Apple's added a lot of value over the years by running the podcast directory, which is the one that's used by all of the players. But it's been difficult to monetize. At the moment, podcasts are monetized either by sort of donations, using one of those buy me a coffee sort of things, or by ads built into them. Apple, of course, has a platform that handles subscriptions. It's used for a lot of apps. And what they're doing is they're basically using that platform, which means that there's a payment system in place that people already trust and are used to using. So it will make it easier for smaller podcasts who don't want to set up all the financial stuff themselves to sell their podcast subscriptions through the Apple platform.
But let's be honest, though, there's a lot of competition now. Obviously, you've got Spotify launching exclusives, Audible have exclusives. Is in some way this a response to that competition, Meg?
I think everybody's getting involved. And I think what we have to look at is where audio is in the bigger scheme of things. When you look at all of the different apps that are coming out, not just the podcasting apps, but the ability to use audio in things like Clubhouse or Twitter or LinkedIn. And I think that Apple is getting involved because everybody else, yes, I guess, they're getting involved because everybody else is.
I love we talked you into it.
I was like, no, they're doing their own thing. And then, they're pretty much copying everybody else because that's what everyone's doing right now.
And it's the thing you were saying earlier, Peter, that I'm fascinated by, which is podcasts originally started as that open standard of RSSs, but it's not that now. Like realistically, there's so many different players that deliver audio in different ways. I mean, surely the format has grown beyond the delivery mechanism.
Well, behind the scenes, the plumbing is open, which means that a player can basically subscribe to any podcast. And I think, unfortunately, what's happening is we're starting to turn into silos where there's exclusive content just on Spotify or Audible, as you said. And I think that's a bad thing. It's starting to move in the direction that we've seen with subscription video, where you've got to subscribe to multiple services. So Apple, interestingly, does not require people to be exclusive with Apple, so that's a good thing. But I think alarm bells are ringing that maybe this is the beginning of the breakup of this open podcast platform. I just hope we're not ending, the end of that really lovely era.
Newspapers have exclusives. Television networks have exclusives. Subscription video services like Netflix have exclusives. Why is it necessarily bad that the audio world doesn't start to have the same thing?
Like video, you have to subscribe to 5 different streaming video services in order to get all of the programs that you want. And I think that's a real pity. And it kind of drives people back to the old days of piracy. If they really want to get a show and they don't want to subscribe to the whole thing. I really like the way any podcast player at the moment can pretty much get any podcast. You can just search for it in each of them. And look, to Apple's credit, they have provided a platform that's open and they do a lot of work. They run this directory and they keep spam and they keep, copies of things out of it. So they must have staff working on this all the time. They've never asked for any money. I mean, obviously they make money by selling devices and, hence the name. They used to sell a lot of iPods. Now I guess they sell a lot of phones. People trust. They're used to buying things through Apple. They've already got their credit card on file. It'll be like a one tap to subscribe. And Apple's even said the price can be anything you like. I think it starts at 49 cents a month US and up from there. But it'll be 30% they take, but that's only in the first year. It'll be 15% after that. So, maybe the prices will be driven down over time and it won't be too bad.
Given Apple are now offering a subscription model, is that now a sort of tacit admission that podcast advertising doesn't work? Because that seems to be the direction most of these services are going in, subscriptions.
Call me ignorant, but I only just recently learned that ads are dropped in as sort of needed or as time changes, that they're not something that are sort of hard read and then stuck in the podcast. I think that advertising, like everything, works, but Apple is the one that's leading the charge at not using our data and being aware of how we're tracking. And we all know that we need tracking and data if we're going to have effective advertising. So Apple can't exactly be going in and going, yes, advertising is the way to go, when they're the ones leading the charge going, no, protect your data.
Well, I think podcast advertising can be very effective. As you said, you can have custom ads dropped in for different people. I mean, I listen to American podcasts and they have ads for local banks, obviously targeted at me. They get inserted into the MP3 stream as I download them. Some players actually monitor what you listen to and they know if you're skipping ads or they know if you're listening to the whole program. So there is a lot of instrumentation and feedback in there. I think what Apple's doing is providing a way that smaller players who don't have, a big publisher behind them and all of that infrastructure can actually make a little bit of money out of the podcast, and that will encourage them, and it won't have too much friction for users to actually sign up. A lot of podcasts I know have ads that have become increasingly annoying. Tech Meme Ride Home, I'm looking at you, glaring at you. And what they do is they run these ads and they constantly say, if you want to get the ad-free version, then just go and sign up here and you can get it that way. So that's one way of getting it. It's very difficult to transition people from something that was free across to something where they have to pay a subscription. And, by Apple doing this, they're making it easier for podcast publishers to do that.
What's involved in moving a consumer from a free model to a paid model?
Quality.
Oh, yeah.
When we yell about, say, the newspapers, the newspapers that are focusing on the investigative reporting and the in-depth stories, they're the ones that are succeeding at that paywall because you can't get that information anywhere else, right? So you do pay because it's something that you're really interested in. When we look at, stuff that I can find on 1,200 other websites or radio stations, then I want that for free. If there's something quality there, then people will definitely pay for it.
All right, there is lots more of this in the podcast of Download This Show. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. We're available on all of them. We'll see you there. Bye.